Bonjour et bienvenue à notre rendez-vous quotidien pour la presse en ligne et en direct sur EBS. Nous sommes aujourd'hui le lundi 26 avril. Nous commençons ce rendez-vous de midi un petit peu en retard, mais comme vous savez, le lundi matin, il y a l'hebdo, les semaines où le collège a lieu le mardi. Et celui-ci vient juste de se terminer. Permettez-moi donc de vous présenter l'agenda de la réunion du collège de demain. Le collège adoptera demain une communication sur les retours volontaires et la réintégration dans le cadre du nouveau pacte sur la migration et l'asile. À l'issue de la réunion du collège, le vice-président Margaritis Schinas et la commissaire Ylva Johansson viendront en salle de presse pour vous présenter ce dossier et le compte-rendu de la réunion. Les commissaires discuteront aussi d'une communication sur l'amélioration de la réglementation, Better Regulation. Ce point devrait être adopté jeudi par procédure écrite de finalisation et le vice-président Maroš Šefčovič sera ici ce jour-là pour vous le présenter. Enfin, pour rappel, cette semaine a lieu la plénière du Parlement européen et comme c'est toujours le cas, donc la réunion aura bien lieu demain et non pas mercredi, juste pour rappel. Je passe maintenant la parole à Viviane qui a des nouvelles sur un accord politique atteint en trilogue ce matin.
Merci, and good afternoon. So the Commission welcomes today's political agreement reached by the European Parliament and the Council on the Commission's proposal for a new public sector loan facility. With this, all the three pillars of the Just Transition Mechanism have been agreed, giving the European Union the means to support the regions in the European Union that are the most affected by the transition to the green economy. The public sector loan facility is expected to mobilize between 25 and 30 billion euros of investment over the next 7 years for projects in the public sector that would otherwise not be financially viable. You will find more information on that in our press release in the Daily News. Also today, and related to this, Commissioners Elisa Ferreira and Kadri Simpson are today opening the third meeting of the Just Transition Platform, which takes place from today until Thursday, the 29th of April, and it brings together all those who are affected by the social and economic impacts of the transition to climate neutrality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Viviane. Maintenant, j'invite Johannes à prendre la parole pour une annonce sur la réussite de nos films européens dans le monde. Johannes.
Merci beaucoup, Eric, and good afternoon, everybody. We would like to congratulate De Vader and Druck, two EU co-funded feature films that together won 3 Oscars last night. De Vader by Florian Zeller took home the award for Best Adapted Screenplay by Florian Zeller and Christopher Hampton, as well as Best Leading Actor for Anthony Hopkins' role. Druck, Another Round by Thomas Winterberg, won the award for Best International Feature Film. The EU supported the development and international distribution of these two movies with 1.4 million euros from the Creative Europe Media Programme. In total, 7 EU-supported films were nominated for 14 awards this year. It's also the 30th anniversary of the media programme, which we highlight with the campaign throughout 2021. And you will find the full laudation in our daily news. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johannes. You have just set the bar very, very high for the dress code in the SPP as of now. I'm looking to everyone here in the room. Tomorrow you know what to come dressed in. Thank you very much. Puis les commissaires Janusz Wojciechowski et Stella Kyriakides représentent la Commission lors de la réunion du Conseil Agriculture et Pêche par visioconférence aujourd'hui. La réunion fera le point sur la réforme de la politique agricole commune et sur la situation actuelle des marchés agricoles et des questions liées au commerce. En outre, la Commission présentera les résultats de l'évaluation de la précédente stratégie de l'UE sur le bien-être animal qui couvrait la période 2012-2015. Le commissaire Wojciechowski participera à une conférence de presse vers 19h ce soir. Avant de passer à vos questions, nous avons appris ce matin la triste nouvelle du décès de notre consoeur, Madame Raphaëlle d'Ivoire, correspondante pour la Belgique et les Pays-Bas, ainsi que pour les affaires des institutions européennes pour le journal La Croix pendant plusieurs années ici à Bruxelles. Au nom du SVP, je tiens à présenter nos condoléances à la famille et aux proches de Raphaël et aussi à ses collègues du journal La Croix. Voilà qui conclut nos annonces pour aujourd'hui et nous sommes maintenant prêts à passer à vos questions. And I pass the floor to Athanasios.
Bonjour, Eric. Thanks for the floor. On Friday, you told me that the European Commission and the European Union did not receive yet, at that stage, an invitation from the United Nations Secretary General to participate in the 5+1 meeting for the Cyprus issue. Do you get one now? And in any case, how are you going to be there? Who exactly is going to Geneva? Thanks.
Thank you. A question for Peter.
Hi, Athanasios, and thank you for the question. There is no update. We still haven't received the invitation from the UN, who is the one to send the invitations. So we haven't, as of today, we still haven't received the invitation. Nevertheless, we have sent a team of experienced senior diplomats to Geneva to be on the spot and to help the United Nations in their current efforts in any way they can.
Thank you very much. Okay, you have a follow-up question, Athanasios.
Yes, please. Could we have the names of the 3 individuals that are going there and their function in the Commission on the External Action Service? Thanks.
No, it's the team that we have sent that is composed of senior diplomats who are experienced and who are very professional, and they are on the spot in order to be able to assist and help the UN in any way they can, on behalf of the European Union, of course.
Thank you. So let us stick to foreign relations issues for Peter or Nabila. Please only keep your hand raised if you have a question on foreign relations. Odile.
Oui, bonjour. First of all, I'd like to extend my sympathy to our Indian colleagues in this press room who have lost so many relatives due to COVID. Now my questions. Could you give us some details about the operation of assistance to India through presumably the EU civil mechanism? And secondly, do you envisage some cooperation with other partners, such as possibly the UK or the UAE, just across the water from India? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Odile. I understand you're right in a way that this is a foreign affairs question. We will come back to it because it actually is it's a humanitarian aid portfolio for Balázs, so I take note of your question. Let's come back to strict foreign relations questions for Peter. Dusan.
Yes, hello, Dusan Gajic, Radio Television of Serbia. I don't know if it's for Peter. My question is about a visit of Serbian president and meeting with Mrs. von der Leyen. I was interested in the readout of the meeting and the topics raised during the meeting, what was discussed, and the topics raised by Mrs. President.
Well, that's a simple one to answer. We have just tweeted on the encounter, so you will be able to see on the Twitter account of the president the different files which were raised during the meeting. As you will see there, of course, the president and the two presidents, discussed the COVID situation and support from the EU, the enlargement process, the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue, and also the Belgrade-Pristina railway link. Other foreign relations related questions for us. Gabriela.
Hi, thank you. This is Gabriela Batinska at Reuters. Sorry for no video on shaky connection. I wanted to ask about foreign relations and vis-à-vis travel and President von der Leyen comments carried by the New York Times today. Do I understand correctly that the Commission will now propose adding US to the white list of countries, the citizens of which are allowed to travel to the EU without any special COVID restrictions? Thank you.
Thank you. I think that today's questions on foreign affairs shows that foreign affairs are actually now much, much wider than diplomatic relations, and there do not seem to be any further questions for Peter for the moment. So we will move to this, to your question now, Gabriela, and then come back to the question from Odile on India. Dujan, I think I made a mistake in my announcement on the railway link. Of course, it is railway link Belgrade to Northern Macedonia. But in the meantime, I give the floor to Adalbert.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Gabriela. So regarding the issue of travel from the US to Europe, in particular this summer, let me maybe start by saying that we have been following very closely the progress of vaccination in the United States, and we seek to restore transatlantic travel as soon as it is safe to do so. And in the meantime, already now, essential travel between the US and Europe, as well as from other countries outside of the EU, remains permitted, however subject to conditions of testing and quarantine as it is set out in the relevant Council recommendation. Now, for the future, as the President said in her interview with the New York Times, the use of EMA-approved vaccines in the US will help to enable travel to the EU. And we are working on, we have made a proposal for digital green certificates, according to which member states will be able to recognize holders of certificates who have been vaccinated with EMA-approved vaccines. And we are in fact already in touch with our US counterparts about the digital green certificates, including in terms of ensuring coherence and compatibility. Now, in the meantime, the Commission is currently preparing a proposal to amend the recommendation on the external travel restriction in order to take into account the recent developments. Discussions are currently ongoing with the member states to prepare this proposal, and that started with a presentation of a Commission non-paper to the member states in a council group called the IPCR last Monday on the 19th of April. However, as the President also underlined, the resumption of travel will depend on the epidemiological situation on both sides of the Atlantic. So this is still work in progress, and we will be able to make announcements on the proposal that we will make as soon as it is ready.
Thank you. So let us continue on this theme for the moment before coming back to other areas. Please only keep your hand raised if it is on this issue of travel from the US or other parts of the world to the EU for Adalbert. So I see a certain number of hands still raised on this. Griselda. No, pardon. David Hashenhorn.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks very much. Adalbert, I wonder if you might update us on the current situation where we understand Greece and perhaps Croatia and Iceland, if we count members of the Schengen zone, have already effectively announced reopenings to U.S. travelers. As I understand, this still remains legally a member state competence to actually decide where travel is open or to whom travel is open or not open, the borders are open or not open. So I wonder if you could update us on the status now regarding U.S. travelers, but also should we actually expect ever for there to be an EU-wide announcement, or will there be a recommendation from the Commission, but in fact in the end it will still be each individual member state that is deciding to whom its borders are open and where flights can arrive from? Thanks.
Sure. Very happy to give you again an overview of how this is organized at the moment in the EU. So member states have agreed on a council recommendation regarding coordination of free movement and on the external travel. And while we are in a situation where we are slowly trying to ease restrictions, including also in relation to travel, the epidemiological situation remains critical, and the spread of the variants remains a very serious concern. And this is why, from our perspective, a coordinated approach on the European level remains essential. And this coordinated approach is set out in a Council recommendation, which was agreed by all Member States, and it should be followed, which is in the interest of all Member States and of the EU in general. And Member States themselves have underlined the need to have such a common approach. Therefore, unilateral approaches from our perspective should be avoided. Now, Member States, as you have said, are indeed taking different approaches in certain circumstances. But from the EU perspective, we are now looking into making this new proposal for the external travel restriction. And as I said, we have started discussions with Member States in order to do this. So the objective is to continue to have a coordinated approach on the European level, indeed based on the current approach, which is a Council recommendation. And as soon as this is done, we'll be able to announce the next steps. So very much with the Commission making an announcement from a European perspective, as you asked.
Thank you. Joe, David, you have a follow-up, sorry.
You seem to be saying that, in fact, the member states are not following the recommendation as it currently exists, because some indeed, and if you could confirm, it's your understanding, has Greece in fact notified the Commission that it's taking an exception for itself from the recommendation. But if member states are currently not following the Council recommendation, which seems to be what you're saying, what confidence can there be then that this summer we'll have an organized approach towards tourist travel? Because we also know that once travelers arrive within the Schengen zone, they're not as clear checks when they move from member state to member state. So I just want to be clear, are you saying that in fact the recommendation is not being followed, and what would the Commission do then to try to assure that there is some organization going forward? Thank you.
It isn't the nature of a recommendation as a legal instrument that it is not a piece of binding law. So indeed, the member states have some flexibility as to how they deal with this issue. Member states do not have the obligation to notify the Commission when they do depart from a recommendation either. However, as I said, from our perspective, it is really important that we continue to have a coordinated approach, and this is why the Commission will make is working on a proposal in order to have an amendment to the Council recommendation and to continue to have an agreed approach on the European level together with the Member States, that then the Member States would be very much encouraged to follow. Now, when it comes to travel over the summer, I think it's also very important to keep in mind our proposal on the digital green certificates, which is a legal proposal and which would very much support the, as you said, organized travel within the EU, whether for EU citizens or for non-EU citizens who have the right to travel within the EU.
Thank you, Albert. Joe, on the same issue.
Thank you, Eric. So just looking at this politically, how can the Commission President come out and actually unilaterally declare that Americans could be able to travel to the EU this summer under new proposals, because technically it is the member states that have competence over their borders, unless has this changed all of a sudden? And then also on, I understand why she mentioned America, because she did a fantastic interview with the New York Times, an American publication. Under the same basis that she named America, would she also be willing to put on record that Britons would be able to travel, because we equally have a similar vaccination per capita rate as the Americans, if not higher, if you look at some metrics. And then, if not, why not? Or would she be willing to do that soon, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. I think from a political perspective, it is clear that the President of the European Commission is showing the way based on all the developments that we can see ongoing at the moment, and which Adalbert has just detailed to you. In particular, of course, vaccination rates, in particular, the work that we are doing on the green digital certificate, And one last element, which perhaps is what differentiates at the moment the US from the UK, there are ongoing contacts with the US on their system and our system and how to make them work, which and Christian will be able to confirm this once again if necessary, is, as far as I understand, not the case for the moment. Of course, this has not changed the prerogatives of member states, and of course, therefore, member states will remain ultimately those who will take the decisions. But as usual with the European construction, we try to set a goal and then we try to build up a base that will allow progressively for a more and more unified approach when it comes to the goal that we have set, in this case, having a unified approach to travel from outside the EU to the EU. And as we can see, with the Green Digital Certificate, with vaccinations that are ongoing, we can hope to progressively get there. Now, it's true that Rome was not built in a day, nor the EU, but we will continue to make as much progress as we can down that road. Follow-up, Joe.
Thank you. So just to confirm, you said that it was mentioned in Martina's piece that there's high-level contacts between Brussels and Washington, but there aren't contacts between London and Brussels on this subject of reopening travel and looking at each other's vaccine passports, digital certificates, whatever we want to call them. So why hasn't there been talks? Is it because the European Union doesn't want to hold these talks? Is it because Britain doesn't want to hold these talks? So just a quick look at the kind of the figures. I've just had a quick Google, and it's 20 times bigger or something like that. The kind of input monetary value from UK EU holiday travel than it is for US EU holiday travel. Thank you.
Thank you. Question for Christian.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Eric. I can just confirm once more, like what Eric already said, that so far there are no contacts to this end with the UK. I can, of course, remind of comments that Commissioner Reinders made recently after the General Affairs Council, where he said in the press conference that, of course, we would also be open towards the UK side on this issue. But as we are for all third countries, this is a possibility foreseen, or there are two possibilities foreseen in our regulation for the Digital Green Certificate, how third country nationals can receive a Digital Green Certificate, which is one on the individual level, that you can basically prove your vaccination status to a member state where you're traveling, and would be issued if you can prove this and the necessary safeguards are respected, a Digital Green Certificate by that member state, or this issue that we are discussing now with the US of the possibility of an advocacy decision, and which is a solution in the medium term for third country nationals to receive such a certificate. As I said, so on the UK side there are no such contacts yet. With the US side there are contacts on the technical level, and there was also a call between Commissioner Reinders and US Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas on last Wednesday, where this issue was raised, which was a constructive discussion between the two.
Thank you. We continue on the same issue. A question from Samuel.
Oui, bonjour. En termes de délai, est-ce qu'on peut penser que les touristes américains donc vaccinés pourraient être autorisés à voyager dans les pays de la zone UE dès que les certificats verts entreront en vigueur? C'est pour avoir une idée à peu près de l'entrée en vigueur. Et vu qu'il n'y a pas eu de contact avec les Britanniques, est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire quels sont les autres pays avec lesquels vous avez des contacts qui pourraient déboucher sur un accord du type de celui qui va être conclu avec les États-Unis?
Merci. Je ne pense pas que nous soyons en mesure de donner un calendrier. Il y a encore évidemment beaucoup de questions à résoudre. La présidente n'a pas donné de calendrier en ce qui concerne cette perspective pour les voyageurs américains vers l'Europe, même si, bien entendu, tout le monde souhaite que cela soit le plus rapide possible. Mais il faut que ce soit sur base d'un système qui soit solide et bien en place. En ce qui concerne ta deuxième question, je passe la parole à Christiane de nouveau.
Alors, en ce qui concerne les contacts avec d'autres PPR, comme je n'ai pas de nouvelles depuis la semaine dernière, alors on est concrètement en contact avec les États-Unis sur ce sujet et il y a aussi plusieurs demandes des autres PTR, mais je ne peux pas confirmer les négociations ou les discussions avec des autres PTR à ce stade. Bien sûr, aussi notre priorité est premièrement de mettre en place le certificat vert digital, premièrement dans l'Union européenne. Et ça, c'est la priorité, bien entendu.
Merci de Christiane. Nous passons à Christian. Sur le même sujet.
Oui, absolument. Et plusieurs questions, parce que j'avoue que je suis un peu flou dans ce que vous avez raconté. La proposition, pour être clair, ce que Mme von der Leyen a déclaré au New York Times, en fait, elle fait une proposition. Ce n'est pas quelque chose d'acquis. Je pense que c'est les États membres qui doivent consulter pour savoir si cette formule est la formule qui va être retenue vis-à-vis des États-Unis. Alors, ma deuxième question, c'est je voudrais savoir si on va ériger ce principe de la vaccination avec des vaccins homologués par l'EMA, et donc par l'Union européenne, comme étant une règle pour pouvoir ouvrir les frontières extérieures de l'Union européenne. Et là, ça pose la question, qu'est-ce qu'on fait avec les Russes? Qu'est-ce qu'on fait avec les Chinois, qui, eux, sont en train de se vacciner avec des vaccins qui ne sont toujours pas homologués par l'Agence européenne du médicament? Et ensuite, qu'est-ce qui va se passer avec les ressortissants américains qui pourraient, comme certains ressortissants de l'Union européenne, ne pas avoir choisi un vaccin homologué par l'EMA? Ils restent en carafe, ils n'ont pas le droit de voyager, ou ils sont obligés de se revacciner. Et dernière question, parce que franchement, elle existe, qu'est-ce qu'on va faire au niveau de l'Union européenne avec les ressortissants hongrois qui sont en train de se vacciner avec un vaccin qui n'est toujours pas homologué? Est-ce que ces gens-là auront droit au certificat ou pas? Merci.
Merci Christian. L'article du New York Times auquel tu fais référence dit explicitement que ce serait les développements aux États-Unis, etc., et en Europe permettront ou permettraient à la Commission de changer sa recommandation. Donc effectivement, il s'agit bien d'un changement de recommandation concernant les États-Unis que la Commission ferait, mais qui, bien entendu, devrait ensuite être endossé par les États membres, comme c'est toujours le cas dans ce domaine. Bien entendu, la présidente n'a jamais dit que c'était elle qui prenait la décision seule dans son bureau. Simplement, elle pense que la Commission pourrait être en mesure de faire un changement de recommandation aux États membres. Ça s'inscrit donc bien dans les procédures habituelles. Elle a dit aussi dans cette interview que c'est parce que justement les États-Unis utilisent des vaccins qui sont des vaccins qui ont fait l'objet d'une appréciation positive de la part de l'Agence européenne du médicament, ce qui rend cette approche compatible avec l'approche européenne. Et tu sais, j'en suis sûr, que effectivement la question des personnes qui ne sont pas vaccinées avec des vaccins autorisés par l'Agence européenne du médicament, mais par des vaccins qui ont été autorisés selon la procédure d'urgence ouverte aux pays membres, est une question qui se pose et que la proposition que la Commission a faite dit qu'alors il revient aux autres États membres de décider si oui ou non ils souhaitent tenir compte de ces vaccins comme ils le feraient pour un vaccin approuvé par l'Agence européenne du médicament, et que dans ce cas-là, ils ne doivent pas faire de distinction, de discrimination entre leurs propres citoyens et ceux de l'autre État membre. Donc voilà, je crois qu'il n'y a pas de changement quelconque qui est annoncé par cette interview, mais simplement la reconnaissance du fait qu'il y a une évolution positive et que si cette évolution positive se confirme, que la situation épidémiologique, c'est dit aussi dans l'entretien, le permet, que nous pourrions nous trouver dans une situation plus favorable pour l'accueil de voyageurs américains en Europe dans les mois à venir. Christian, tu as une question de follow-up, question de suivi.
Mais depuis ce matin, tout le monde, après avoir lu le New York Times, avait l'impression que les ressortissants américains allaient venir cet été, rouvrir nos châteaux, nos hôtels, etc., par la grâce de Mme Ursula von der Leyen, c'est tout. Et là, il y a un vrai problème de communication, parce que dans cette interview, ce n'était pas clair. Donc voilà, merci d'avoir éclairé ma lanterne.
Bah, écoute, ma lecture de l'article est parfaitement limpide. Il y est bien dit « to recommend » a switch in a policy, to recommend a switch in a policy. Voilà, le vocabulaire me semble particulièrement précis, mais je suis heureux d'avoir la possibilité d'apporter les éclaircissements nécessaires aujourd'hui sur le podium. Tu as tout à fait raison de dire qu'il est important de pouvoir communiquer sur ce sujet de manière précise. Et évidemment, il est clair que l'Union européenne est une construction politique avec une répartition des rôles entre les institutions qui est très spécifique, et il appartient à la Commission de faire des recommandations. Et il est donc normal que la Commission puisse envisager à tout moment, sur base des faits tels qu'ils existent, de changer de recommandations si cela paraît être approprié. Je ne pense pas qu'il faille nous retirer le droit de pouvoir réfléchir à un changement de recommandation. Voilà, nous continuons sur le sujet et je passe la parole à Luis. À Luis. Same issue.
Possible to set an agreement between two member states to recognize this green digital certificate each other. For example, for Spain, the British tourism is very important in terms of economics, so it could be possible to set an agreement between Spain and United Kingdom to recognize this green digital certificate. I mean, Spain and UK are vaccinating with the same vaccine, so apparently it shouldn't be a problem.
So let me just specify that the UK is no longer a member state. But this aside, your question therefore relates to whether there can be an agreement between a member state and a third country. I give the floor to Christian.
Luis, well, look, I wouldn't want to speculate about possible agreements or steps that the member state might take. I mean, in principle, not in principle, I mean, the digital green certificate will be based on a regulation on which member states have already found political agreement. We hope that the European Parliament will find that as well soon, and then that negotiations on this text can start between the co-legislators, so we can get this continue to get this swiftly on the way. And then, of course, this is a regulation which will be binding on all member states, and on this basis, member states will deal with it. So I would not like to speculate about possible deviations from this line in the future. But let me remind again that what I pointed to before. I mean, we have not received a request from the UK at this stage. But of course, we are open for third countries to talk about these possibilities, and this is also why we have foreseen this in the regulation, this possibility of an adequacy decision, which would, by the way, and there maybe I can add a little thing still to Christian's question, also be a decision by the Commission. So if the Commission decides on adequacy, this is something that we would be able to do on the basis of the digital green certificates regulation for a third country.
Thank you, Christian. But let's be clear, you have there's a difference between saying that the US system would be adequate, i.e. give out an adequacy decision on the system, and then the recommendation to therefore shift the recommendation on whether US citizens can travel to Europe also for non-essential trips. Yanis.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Yanis.
Excellent. So just to be clear, this new proposal for an amended recommendation for non-essential travel with third countries will, broadly speaking, encompass the move from the logic of a white list based on the epidemiological criteria in those countries to the logic of the individual passengers and whether they've been vaccinated or whether they have a negative PCR test or whatnot. And when should we expect that proposal? Because the summer is approaching. Thanks.
You're absolutely right. The summer is approaching. We're all looking forward to it. Look, there's not much that we can add at this stage to the comments that have been made. I think it shows a policy direction. It is clear that many factual questions will still need to be worked through. And many details will need to be set before we get to that. But it is also important to basically set the horizon, if you wish, set an objective towards which we can be working. And this is what the statements by the President in yesterday's interview did. And we will, of course, come back to this issue as the file progresses. More questions on this issue, which fascinates everybody apparently. Philippe.
Bonjour. Oui, j'ai une question effectivement toujours sur la question des États-Unis. Dans vos contacts préliminaires ou des contacts avec vos contreparties sur place, quel est l'état de la question de la réciprocité de cette mesure? Qu'est-ce que les Américains vous répondent? Et le cas échéant, est-ce que ce serait une condition sine qua non, comme c'est le cas, si je ne m'abuse, et si la situation n'a pas changé, concernant la Chine? Voilà, merci.
Merci. Christian, what details can we give, if any, of the ongoing discussions?
Alors Philippe, je suis désolé, mais je pense à ce stade, je n'ai pas beaucoup à détail de ajouter à ce que nous avons déjà dit. Ce que peut-être ajouter, ce sont quelques mots d'un readout de la réunion entre le commissaire et le secrétaire du Department of Homeland Security. So in this conversation, Commissioner for Justice and U.S. Secretary for Homeland Security had a fruitful and encouraging exchange for future cooperation between the European Union and the United States in the field of justice and security. Commissioner Reinders presented the Commission's proposal on the Digital Green Certificate with the objectives of facilitating free movement within the EU in the context of the COVID-19 crisis. Commissioner Reinders informed that the Commission was committed to having this tool in place by the summer. Legislative and technical work is ongoing and progressing. Commissioner Reinders suggested that the EU and the US should work together at international level on common issues, such as the issue of interoperability of systems. Before this discussion, technical talks between services had already taken place and will continue in the coming weeks.
Thank you. Follow-up, Philippe.
Oui, simplement, donc en soi, vous ne pouvez pas dire à ce stade si l'Union européenne demande, ce qui paraîtrait relativement logique, une réciprocité.
Je pense que Christian ne peut pas rajouter quoi que ce soit à ce qu'il a déjà dit dans sa réponse précédente. Marketa. Oh, Marketa is on something else, so we will come to you later. Tommaso, is it on this?
Well, it's on the Irish scheme of compulsory quarantine.
No, hold on. We will come back to that later, please. Jean, une question sur ce sujet.
Hop, vous m'entendez? C'est bon?
Oui, c'est bon, vas-y, Jean.
Oui, c'est bon, vas-y, Jean. Oui, bonjour. Je voudrais revenir sur la question de la réciprocité, qui pour moi est fondamentale. Si jamais on autorise à terme, et donc les États membres décident de modifier leur résolution et réouvrent les frontières de l'Union européenne aux Américains vaccinés, est-ce qu'il y aura bien une réciprocité pour les Européens? Deuxième chose, j'avoue que c'est un peu curieux comme proposition de la part de la Commission européenne de faire venir les Américains vaccinés chez nous pour qu'ils aillent sur nos plages, pendant que nous, on est encore confinés chez nous. J'avoue que ça me paraît complètement à contretemps. Pour l'instant, il n'est pas question qu'on puisse voyager librement au sein de l'Union européenne, même s'il y a des pays qui déconfinent plus ou moins. Je te rappelle que l'Allemagne est entrée dans un confinement encore un peu plus dur cette semaine. Donc j'ai du mal à... Je ne comprends pas bien le signal que veut envoyer la présidente en faisant cette proposition. Et j'aurais après une question sur tout à fait autre chose. Tu pourras me redonner la parole, Eric? Je la pose tout de suite.
Avec grand plaisir, Jean, mais on va essayer de garder les sujets dans leur ordre, donc je te repasserai la parole plus tard. Il y a beaucoup d'autres collègues aussi qui ont d'autres questions. On a toujours Odile qui attend sa réponse à sa question sur l'aide à apporter à l'Inde, qui connaît une situation épidémiologique difficile. Je crois sur la réciprocité que nous n'avons rien à rajouter par rapport à ce que Christiane a été en mesure de dire pour le moment. Donc je pense qu'il va falloir attendre de voir l'avancée des discussions avant de pouvoir vous fournir à tous une réponse à cette question. En ce qui concerne le signal, permets-moi simplement de te rappeler que dans son interview, la présidente a bien entendu rajouté que cela dépendrait entièrement de l'évolution de la situation épidémiologique et que, évidemment, cela veut dire qu'il y a un lien entre la capacité pour les Européens eux-mêmes de voyager à travers l'Europe pour se rendre sur les plages, comme tu dis, et la possibilité pour des voyageurs en provenance des États-Unis de faire de même. Donc je ne pense pas que là, il y ait de contradiction. Et évidemment, tu as tout à fait raison de souligner le fait que ça doit être lié à une évolution positive de la situation épidémiologique. Et de fait, c'est ce sur quoi la présidente de la Commission a mis l'accent pendant l'interview. Alors, nous continuons sur le sujet. Please only keep your hand raised if your question is on this, so as to allow me to manage this correctly. So, Marketa, please unraise your hand. Thank you. Gabriella, question on this.
Thank you, and sorry to be asking the same question all over again. Could you please specify if what President von der Leyen said means that the Commission would love to make the recommendation that would allow Americans to travel to the EU without any special restrictions if the conditions are right, which is what I think you seem to be saying, or is it indeed what the New York Times said, which sounds much more like a decision that has already been made by the Commission, that the Americans will be allowed to travel, full stop? Is it a decision that the Commission has already taken and will recommend it to member states, or is it something that maybe will be possible in the future depending on the epidemiological situation? Thank you.
Thank you. The actual quotes from the president, which I see in the article, use the future tense. So clearly it shows that the decision on switching policy on the recommendation has not yet been taken, but that we would certainly welcome to be able to make such a switch in the recommendation, that we expect that the president expects that member states would welcome this, but also, as the president says, that this will depend on the evolution of the epidemiological situation. So I think that the the direction of travel is extremely clear. The decision has, of course, not yet been taken, or else Adalbert would be presenting this decision to you, but that the facts are making us optimistic that we will come to a point where such a recommendation, a switch in policy with regards to the recommendation, will be a possibility for the Commission to take. Marine.
Hi, Eric, can you hear me?
Barely. I don't know where you are.
Sorry, I'll shout. At the bad FT Wi-Fi. Just a question on the legal status of an adequacy decision. Even though it's possible under the digital green certificate, would the decision to grant an adequacy decision mean that member states no longer could then have the power to reject Americans from coming into their borders? Will it basically give a blanket EU-wide decision permitting travel into the Union? Thank you.
Thank you. It's an important question, Marine. Thank you for asking it. The answer is clearly no, but I give the floor to Adalbert to explain to you the distinction between the two.
Yes, thanks, Marine. So we need to be clear about the distinction between the work taking place in the framework of the digital green certificates and the external travel restriction. Everything that Christian has been referring to in relation to the adequacy decisions and the discussion with the United States is about the digital green certificates as such. So the possibility for the Commission to make sure in the future, when the digital green certificates are in place, that a certificate issued by the US is recognized in the EU. So this is one thing. But when it comes to what specific rights this certificate gives, and specifically about the question of what are the conditions for entry into the EU, that's a slightly separate, although connected discussion, if that makes sense. So legally speaking, the answer to your question is no. If I may, maybe I can just say one more thing, which is all of the questions that have been raised by various colleagues about the role of testing, the specifics of the conditions that will be applied to different nationals from different countries. All of these things are, of course, relevant questions. And beyond the policy direction that the President has signaled, of course, all of these questions will need to be addressed. And this is why we have started these discussions with the member states last week, including about all of these different aspects. And when we make a proposal to amend the Council recommendation, all of these things are among the aspects that we will need to take into account. So we might not have answers for you today, but it doesn't mean that we are not thinking about all of these important issues. So please just stay tuned.
Thank you very much. So Tommaso, your question up until now was not on this, but on the Irish scheme, so I'm not taking your questions for the moment. Angela.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for the floor. I was wondering, as you're not going as far as saying that you will be asking reciprocity to the US for the travels next summer, I was wondering if you, in the negotiations with Washington, you have already addressed this point. Well, are they willing to accept people who have been vaccinated in Europe with vaccines which have not been authorized in the US, such as AstraZeneca or the Chinese one or the Sputnik one? And if you envisage that this could be a problem for them to accept people from a problem in the question of the reciprocity of the mechanism. Thanks.
Thank you, Angela. I'm afraid you're bringing us beyond what we can say at the moment. As I think Christian has clearly explained, we have technical discussions which are ongoing with the US on their system, on our system, how they could both work. That's the substance of the discussions that have been ongoing. A related but somewhat distinct discussion is now based on this. What are the consequences that we could draw from this? And what the President has been outlining in the interview yesterday is the fact that we hope that this could allow US travelers to come to the European Union. I'm afraid that for the moment we cannot give you more on the content of other discussions than what is taking place at the technical level, but I'm sure we will have ample opportunity to come back to that in the future. So, Tommaso, I see your hand is still raised. Is it on the US? If not, please unraise your hand because I have your name is on my list, but I have a whole series of other questions. I see no further questions on this. Thank you very much. Albert, you want to add something?
David avait une question migration.
Yes, David, you had a question on migration for Adalbert, since he is on the podium. David Hassenholm. Oh, David Carretta? Oh, sorry. Okay. Opportunity lost. So I now come back to Odile's very first question on India. Odile, merci beaucoup de ta patience. Et donc, Balázs va revenir, mais peut-être, si tu es encore avec nous, tu pourrais reposer ta question, étant donné que cela fait près d'une heure. Si tu es encore là. Odile, tu as la parole.
OK. Bon, je vais la poser en français cette fois-ci. Oui. Est-ce que vous pourriez nous donner quelques détails sur l'assistance que prévoit apparemment l'Union européenne pour aider l'Inde confrontée à ce tsunami du Covid? Et éventuellement, est-ce que vous envisagez des coopérations, soit avec nos amis britanniques ou avec d'autres partenaires, par exemple les Émirats arabes unis qui sont juste en face de l'Inde ou autres? Merci.
Balázs.
Oui, donc en français alors, bonjour. Donc effectivement, je peux confirmer que le vendredi, l'Inde, vu la situation épidémiologique difficile dans le pays, a activé le mécanisme de protection civile de l'Union européenne. Depuis lors, y compris pendant le week-end, on a travaillé très dur pour être en contact avec nos États membres et avec aussi des pays qui participent au mécanisme de protection civile pour voir s'il y a des pays qui sont en mesure d'apporter leur assistance à l'Inde à travers le mécanisme. Donc, jusqu'ici, et ajoutons-y que les Indiens ont demandé principalement de l'oxygène médical et du médicament antiviral, notamment Remdesivir. Et donc, jusqu'ici, je peux confirmer qu'il y a un pays qui a déjà confirmé son assistance à travers le mécanisme. Ce pays, c'est l'Irlande, qui a proposé 700 concentrateurs d'oxygène. Et à part ça, il faut ajouter qu'il y a déjà deux pays, principalement la France et l'Allemagne, qui ont déjà indiqué leur volonté d'aider dans ce contexte publiquement hier. Donc on est en contact étroit avec Paris et Berlin pour voir si cette aide pourrait être mise en œuvre à travers le mécanisme. Donc à part ça, il y a encore d'autres contacts qu'on a à travers notre centre de crise avec d'autres États membres et aussi avec des pays qui participent au mécanisme mais qui ne sont pas membres de l'Union européenne. Donc on peut s'attendre, je pense qu'on peut dire ça, on peut s'attendre à ce que dans les prochaines heures, dans les prochains jours, on puisse confirmer davantage d'aide dans ce contexte.
Merci. Nawab, I see you have a question on India as well. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Eric. Actually, I wanted to ask about flights to India. What is your recommendation for EU member states to flights to India after a few EU member states have banned their flights to India? Thank you.
Okay, I will pass the floor back to Adalbert. Thank you very much, Balázs, for this. It's true that we have been focusing a lot on flights from India. But I don't know what is our recommendation on flights to India, if we have a recommendation on this. Adalbert.
Hello. Yes, so this maybe would be a good opportunity for me to to recall that we are, of course, very much concerned about the spread of the variants, the more severe and contagious variants of the coronavirus. And for this purpose, we have agreed with the member states, or rather, member states have agreed a recommendation on the external travel restriction, which was amended in February, that also takes into account the spread of the variants. When it comes to, so this recommendation mainly addresses the question of travel from countries from countries outside the EU to the EU. However, it is also entirely understood that we should continue to discourage any non-essential travel in general, including also outside of the EU. However, when it comes to giving recommendations to travelers, this is very much something that's member states' competence. It's typically done by the ministries of foreign affairs in cooperation with the embassies of member states on the ground. And member states will have different recommendations to their nationals depending on their assessment of the situation. So I would encourage you to check the communications by the respective ministries of foreign affairs to see what the recommendation is.
Thank you, Adalbert. So we close the India chapter. I have a long list of colleagues who had different subjects. Augustine, I think you wanted to come back to the issue of the meeting with the Serbian president. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, you said that they spoke also about the dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia, and we saw on the tweet of President von der Leyen from Friday that she spoke also with Viktor Orban, the Hungarian Prime Minister, also about the Western Balkans. One of the main topics those days in the region and elsewhere is the idea of border changes as a solution between countries. So I wonder whether President of the Commission has a position on those ideas that are circulating around. So ideas, be it through alleged non-paper from Slovenia or some other ideas which touches the borders of the countries in the Western Balkans.
Look, apart from the alleged non-paper that people keep referring to and that we have never seen, we're not aware of other ideas that are floated on this. And I think that you know very, very well the position of the European Union on this, which Peter has repeated here time and time again, on the fact that, of course, we are absolutely not in favor of any changes in borders. So I think that is something that we can put to rest once and for all. Whatever papers have come, will come, might come, or won't come, our position is very, very clear on this issue. Thank you. Now, I close this chapter because time is already moving on quite a lot, and I go to Marketa, who had a question on a different subject.
Now, sorry. Do you hear me?
Yes, we do. Go ahead. Yes, we do. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I have a question concerning the final audit procedure about the EU funds in Czechia, which the Commission published on Friday. I've got today an email from the spokesperson from your services, and there's like, while exchanges between the Commission auditors and the Czech authorities may continue in the context of remaining open issues, the audit procedure as such does not foresee any further steps. I wanted to ask, does it mean that the Commission is not expecting or is not asking Czechia for the proposed financial correction of 50 million CZ crowns, which is stated in Annex 2 of the final audit, or is the Commission asking at least to get the financial correction in this high? And is the Commission going to launch a contradictory procedure in case Czechia is not going to pay it, because the Prime Minister Babiš already said on Saturday that the Czech Republic is not going to pay anything? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Question for Balázs.
Indeed. Good afternoon. So this time in English. So let's clarify this indeed. When we look at the audit report, we can see that our auditors looked into almost 100 operations. Now, the important point here is that the Czech authorities have not declared any expenses for any of the operations addressed in the report, which is why there is no need for financial correction. We are not talking about financial correction in this context at this point in time. So what remains to be done is rather to implement the recommendations. So the report that we published that was sent to the Czech authorities at the end of November last year formulated 15 recommendations to essentially enhance compliance with the financial regulation and with the applicable national framework when it comes to EU funds. And 11 of them have already been implemented. So what happens now is that we will continue to be in contact with the Czech authorities on the remaining 4 recommendations.
Thank you. Are there other questions on this issue for Balázs? Please only keep your hand raised if it is on this. Jean, ta question est sur cet audit? No? Okay. Marketa, you have a follow-up.
Sorry, just for the financial procedure. So do I understand it correctly that the Commission, financial correction. Do I understand it correctly that the Commission is not going to ask Czechia to pay even those 50 million crowns, the correction which is stated in the Annex 2 of the final audit report, which is there as a proposed financial correction?
Yes. So again, I think the important point is this. The Czech authorities did not declare any expenses towards the Commission, towards the EU budget, on the operations that were looked at in the context of the report, which is why the EU budget remains protected. We haven't made any payments on those operations. So at this point in time, we are not talking about financial correction.
So there's nothing to recover.
Indeed.
There is nothing to recover, basically. Had the claims been made, then there might be something to recover, but that is not the case. This is what Balázs is making very clear. Not trying to, is making very clear. Sorry for that. Thank you. Hans, on the same issue?
Yes, indeed, on the same issue, Hans van der Bocht with Politico. I'd just like to know, because there was already this morning the European People's Party calling for the EU's new budget rule of law mechanism to be activated over this issue. One could, of course, say this is more motivated by political reasons, but I would like to know the Commission's point of view on whether such a case is actually something that could fall under this rule of law mechanism related to budget expenses, whether this is actually anything that could fall under there. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me remind you that this is a case that has been going on for a long, long time, so completely predates the period covered by the regulation. Balázs?
Indeed. So the regulation came into force on the 1st of January this year, whereas in the report, the time frame is essentially concerning the 2007-2013 MFF and the subsequent MFF. So 2014-2020, whereas the regulation came into force on the 1st of January this year. So indeed, we are talking about different periods here.
Thank you very much. Hans, follow up.
Yes, indeed. Maybe I should specify that they call for further funds to be halted there. So I just would like to know whether in that sort of perspective, if we talk about funds under the new budget, whether this audit could have any implication from the Commission's point of view.
Look, Hans, you have to bear with us. We have just presented, indeed, a final report, and this is the subject on which we can answer questions. We cannot comment on proposals that have just come out of the European Parliament this morning. Sandor, do you have a question on this?
France and on the visit of Prime Minister Orban with Ursula von der Leyen on Friday. Can I go ahead?
No, sorry, you're then at the back of the list. Apologies for that. I have quite a few colleagues who still had other questions. So that closes the issue. Thank you very much, Balázs. And I come back to Tommaso Lecca, who I believe had a question on the Irish quarantine scheme, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, hi, thank you for the floor. So 10 days ago, the Commission wrote a letter to the Irish government on the compulsory quarantine scheme to be spent in hotel at the expenses of the travellers. So did the Commission receive any reply with an explanation on this scheme? Did the Irish government disclose the exact number of EU citizens stuck in the hotels? And what are the next steps that the Commission will take to tackle this violation, we'll call it, of the freedom of movement within the EU? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Question for Christian.
Yes, thank you, Tommaso. As you rightly said, we wrote this letter about 10 days ago and expressed a very clear position. I also explained it in the press room. But let me be very brief. The 10 days that we're speaking here are 10 working days. So we have not received yet a reply. We expect this for later this week. Let me just, if I have the floor for a second, maybe add one last thing, as there were so many questions on the question of reciprocity. I have nothing to add on the relating here on the talks with the US, but I can point you to the draft regulation, which in principle for such decisions foresees that there should also be reciprocity ensured. So just to clarify the legal framework or the draft legal framework that we are speaking about.
Thank you very much, Christian. I see no other questions on the Irish quarantine scheme, so I go back to Jean. Jean, c'est à toi.
Oui. Bonjour, tu m'entends bien? Allô? Tu m'entends?
Si tu arrêtes,
allô, allô?
Si tu arrêtes de toucher ton micro, je t'entendrai très bien. Rebonjour, Jean.
Tu sais, comme tu le sais, les boomers sont pas très à l'aise avec tous ces trucs technologiques.
Je suis dans la même catégorie que toi.
Voilà, écoute, c'est une question, je pense, pour Christian Wiegand, en l'occurrence, la justice, l'égalité. Je pense que c'est lui qui s'occupe de ça. Voilà, il y a eu la semaine dernière un événement qui a été organisé par la Fédération européenne des journalistes, qui est une des branches de la Fédération internationale des journalistes, sur l'islamophobie. Or, et c'est un événement qui est soutenu manifestement par la Commission européenne, puisque Tommaso Ciamparino a retweeté sur cet événement pour s'en féliciter. Tommaso Ciamparino travaille pour la DG Justice, manifestement, et est chargé de la lutte contre les contenus haineux. Passons. Ce qui est intéressant dans cet événement organisé, c'est qu'il y a le principal interlocuteur était le CCIB, qui est la version belge du CCIF, qui est une organisation proche des frères musulmans, qui a été dissoute en France pour justement son militantisme islamiste politique. Donc, je voudrais savoir si la Commission européenne a soutenu effectivement cet événement, considère que le CCIB belge est un représentant légitime d'une partie de la communauté musulmane. Si vous considérez d'ailleurs qu'il est tout à fait normal que cet événement soit annoncé avec des unes de journaux français qui soi-disant appellent à la haine contre l'islam, les journaux en question étant Le Point et le Nouvel Observateur. Donc voilà, je ne suis pas sûr que vous puissiez répondre tout de suite, mais je pense qu'il y a un vrai problème politique, en tous les cas pour nous Français, un vrai problème politique de voir une institution européenne soutenir une organisation islamiste intégriste. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Déjà, faudrait-il que ce soit le cas, je passe la parole à Christiane pour savoir s'il sait quelque chose au sujet de cet événement qui, moi, personnellement, ne m'est pas connu. Christiane.
Oui, bonjour Jean. Alors, je peux peut-être dire quelques mots. Alors, généralement, en ce qui concerne les financements par l'Union européenne, la Commission a mis en place des garanties pour veiller à ce que seules les organisations qui opèrent dans le respect des valeurs de l'Union européenne et des droits fondamentaux consacrés par la charte reçoivent des fonds de nos programmes. Alors, concernant la question spécifique, la Commission a cherché la Fédération européenne des journalistes d'entreprendre une série de webinaires avec des journalistes afin de favoriser la prise de conscience des musulmans et d'islam dans le contexte, et ça c'est dans le contexte du plan d'action de l'UE contre le racisme. Évidemment, l'organisation de tels événements doit assurer, avec le contactant, le respect de toutes les règles applicables et les valeurs de l'Union européenne et les droits fondamentaux, comme je dis au début. Oui, je le laisse avec ça pour le moment. Merci.
Merci. Jean, tu as une question de suivi?
Oui, une question de suivi. Je me doute bien que vous découvrez le sujet en ce moment, mais donc je voudrais pouvoir y revenir demain ou en bilatéral, parce qu'encore une fois, évidemment, tout le monde partage l'objectif de la lutte contre les contenus haineux, mais la notion même d'islamophobie est une notion qui est très contestée, notamment dans mon pays, et que ça soit une organisation proche des frères musulmans qui explique ce qu'est la haine contre les musulmans, ça pose une vraie question de fond. Et ce n'est pas la première fois d'ailleurs que cette question se pose, parce qu'il me semble que la commissaire Dalli avait voulu recevoir juste avant son interdiction en France le CCIF, donc la maison mère française du CCIB. Donc là, il y a peut-être besoin d'une clarification et j'aimerais bien qu'on puisse y revenir. Je pourrais y revenir demain ou encore une fois en bilatéral, voilà, une fois que vous aurez un peu farfouillé et cherché un petit peu ce qu'il y a derrière cet événement. Voilà, merci.
Nous allons farfouiller et Christiane reviendra vers toi, bien entendu, dès que nous aurons plus d'informations, en particulier, donc, si je comprends bien, sur l'aspect de l'organisation qui a été amenée à intervenir dans cet événement. Merci. So now I move to Lorne, who has been waiting for a long time. I still have Lorne, Tommaso Galavotti, and Sandor. Lorne. Tommaso Galavotti and Sandor. Lorne.
Okay, I hope you can hear me well. Good afternoon. It's a bit of a stairmaster for Adalbert to get him running up and down, but I have a question about Libya and the case of the drowning deaths. There've been a lot of conflicting reports about what went on, and I wanted to get the Commission's position on what you believed happened. And then just given the state of the conflict in Libya, the improving weather, more people are likely to leave. So isn't it time to put in place a concerted EU search and rescue effort? And just on that, what's going on with the contact group that was supposed to be coordinating that, the Commissioner was setting up?
Look, your first question, Lorne, is not very clear in terms of what happened. I mean, this is certainly not something on which we can comment. But on the second bit of your question, I give the floor to Adalbert.
Thank you, Lorne. And indeed, perhaps for the first leg of your question, I would suggest that you get in touch with Frontex, our European Border and Coast Guard agency that had some assets on the ground and that would be able to give you a more detailed readout of their perception of this very tragic incident. Now, when it comes to a more European approach to this question of search and rescue, perhaps I can just draw your attention or remind you of everything that we put on the table as part of our proposals on the new Pact on Migration and Asylum. And this includes elements such as a solidarity mechanism for systematic relocation of people who have been rescued, followed search and rescue operations, such as also a guidance on non-criminalization of humanitarian activities by private operators, notably NGOs, in the case of search and rescue. And finally, this European contact group on search and rescue, which you mentioned indeed, and which has been now put in place. There was a first meeting of this, which was opened by Commissioner Johansson, if I am not mistaken, at the end of March. But in any case, we published a daily news item on this, as well as the Commissioner's speech and a blog post that she wrote in order to explain how she sees the work of this contact group. The first meeting brought together the national authorities concerning national authorities that are involved in the search and rescue operations of member states and Schengen associated countries, and it's going to be important in the next meetings of this contact group also to take into account, for example, the work of merchant vessels, which are also extremely important in this context, in addition to national authorities and NGOs. So, of course, we continue to follow this issue extremely closely. It's one of key importance for the European migration policy, and from our perspective, the adoption of our proposals for the new Pact on Migration and Asylum should make a very significant difference in how these issues are handled on the European level.
You have a follow-up, Lorne.
Yes, that's correct. Just as you weren't able to say what you believe happened, we did speak to Frontex, my colleagues. From the information we've gathered, the countries involved were aware that these people were in the water and in trouble for 2 days, but they chose not to do anything about it. There were excuses of bad weather and so on, but they later let NGO vessels go and do the job. I mean, how can that kind of thing be justified? I don't know, was the Coast Guard having a day off like the EU-trained Libyan Coast Guard was doing recently?
Sorry, which Coast Guard are you talking about now? Having a day off?
There I was talking about national Coast Guards. I was being a little facetious. It's just we'd seen email about the Libyan Coast Guard having a day off and not being able to rescue some people recently. I'm more interested in the issue of how you can justify member states leaving people in the water for 2 days and then eventually allowing the NGOs, these are the NGOs that have been vilified and attacked by national authorities as well for going into the water and actually looking for people. How can you justify that?
Thank you, Lorne. This is a difficult question for me, because I do not believe we as the European Commission are really able to justify or otherwise comment on actions on which we have no competence or influence. It is the case that the search and rescue operations are both conducted and coordinated by national authorities. They are the only ones that are really well placed to assess what is possible and not possible for them to do in any operational situation, and to coordinate with all the different stakeholders on the ground while respecting their international obligations under, in particular, the law of the sea. So the Commission not being present on the ground and not having competence is not really in a position to give you much comment on what actually happened, beyond, of course, the expression of our sadness about the tragic character of this, which is something that also Vice President Schinas and Commissioner Johansson have done publicly.
Thank you very much. So now I move on to Tommaso. Tommaso Galavotti. Tommaso, hi. Tommaso Galavotti.
Yes.
Tommaso, hi.
Yeah, hi. Hi, good afternoon. Tommaso Galavotti, in Kronos, Italy. Thank you for the floor. I would have two questions. I'll start with vaccines. I would have another on competition maybe later if there is time. On vaccines, I would like to know if you have any update on the possible legal action towards AstraZeneca, because we were waiting for it on Friday, but we haven't heard anything about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, we do have an update on this issue, and I give the floor to Stefan.
Thank you very much, Tommaso. Indeed, the Commission has started last Friday a legal action against the company AstraZeneca on the basis of breaches of the advance purchase agreement. The reason indeed being that the terms of the contract, or some terms of the contract, have not been respected, and the company has not been in a position to come up with a reliable strategy to ensure the timely delivery of doses. What matters to us in this case is that we want to make sure that there is a speedy delivery of a sufficient number of doses that the European citizens are entitled to and which have been promised on the basis of the contract. So the Commission has indeed started this legal action on its own behalf and on behalf of the 27 member states that are fully aligned in their support for this procedure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan. So I know you have another question on competition, but first let me give the floor to Sandor, who has been waiting as well for a long time. Sandor. I hope you haven't given up on us. You have the floor. Your hand is raised in any case, so you can speak.
Yeah. Okay, so the question is about the visit of Prime Minister Orban last Friday with President Ursula von der Leyen. I would like to know two things. First of all, has the remaining difficulties regarding Hungary's recovery program, have they been cleared during this meeting? And the second question is, what has been said by President von der Leyen regarding rule of law, because she tweeted that was also, this issue was raised. I would like to know if this was on the rule of law mechanism or what was this. Can you tell us more details? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Look, the President has had contacts with many heads of state and government, as you would expect, over national reform programs in the run-up to the deadline of the 30th of April for submission of the reports. You remember that it's not a firm deadline, but it's definitely a point at which we expect that many member states, if not most member states, will have submitted their plans. And these discussions, as you would expect, are there to allow member states to continue to obtain a good feeling for what are the issues and the priorities that need to be tackled in their plans, knowing that, of course, the formal assessment of the plans will start once the final plans have been submitted. So it's not up to me to tell you whether any final issues have been cleared or not, because in any case, it is only after the Commission will have done its formal assessment that we will see whether it is in a position to recommend to the Council the adoption of the plan as such. And on the rule of law, I'm afraid I cannot go into details of the conversation as it took place, but you know that we have various mechanisms through which this is addressed. In particular, as has been said here on the podium many, many times, the rule of law report, also CSRs in the context of the European semester, etc., etc. So it is, of course, an issue which is close to the heart of the President, and that she raises when the opportunity arises. Now let me go back to Tommaso, who had a question on competition. Tommaso.
Here?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. It's a question of competition for Arianna, I guess. It's about Alitalia, because we have I have read on an Italian newspaper, Il Messaggero, that the government is starting its plan B. So the company ITA is going to lease airplanes and slots from Alitalia, just to not to miss the bookings for the summer. I wonder if this is a move which is in line with the EU rules, and also if you can tell us, considering that the times are going to be a bit longer than expected on a solution on Alitalia, can we expect a decision on the two bridge loans in the near future? Thank you.
Thank you. Arianna.
Ciao Tommaso, hi everyone. I'll try to be brief since it was already a very long midday. So we have no comment on this. In general, as we have already said several times in the press room, we are in contact with the Italian authorities on the Alitalia file. We have no comment on the content of the ongoing discussions. For what concerns the investigations, I think I mentioned them already last week. It's two investigations, 1.3 billion, as we all know very well. They are ongoing, and unfortunately, I cannot prejudge their timing or outcome, of course.
Thank you. So indeed, this midday briefing has already been going on for a very long time. I will take two last questions, and then we will close. Pascal.
Oui, bonjour. Désolé de rallonger ce long midday briefing. Ma question est une question qui porte sur l'espace. Dernièrement, la Commission a scellé provisoirement un accord FFPA avec l'Agence spatiale européenne. Je voulais savoir maintenant quelle était la procédure pour valider cet accord et le calendrier précis, et surtout si la Commission comptait communiquer sur cet accord. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Une question pour Sonia.
Bonjour Pascal, merci beaucoup pour ta question. En effet, la Commission a proposé un accord, a fait une proposition à l'Agence spatiale européenne qui était agréée avec l'agence, et maintenant on a présenté cette proposition aux États membres et on est en train de discuter cette proposition avec les États membres. C'est ce que je peux te dire à ce stade-là.
Merci beaucoup. Last question goes to Angela.
Yes, thank you again, Rick. My question is on the recovery fund. I'll try to be brief. The French minister, Bruno Le Maire, has just said that they will get the first bunch of money in September and not July, and that they are not asked to approve the pension reform for the moment. So my question is, I wonder if you have decided with other member states, such as Italy, for example, to give the first bunch of money later and not in July, and if you are asking to have details on the reforms which are asked for in the recommendation of the Commission for each member state already in the next 3 months, so before the Council gives its opinion on the national plans, or even later. I hope the question is clear. Thanks.
It certainly is, and I give the floor to Marta.
Thank you for your questions, Angela. So on the question of the timing of disbursements, I think we had the occasion to explain here several times on this podium that there are two conditions which are necessary for us to be able to disburse funds under the Recovery and Resilience Facility to member states. One is obviously the ratification of the own resources decisions by all member states, and the second one is the approval of the Recovery and Resilience plans once they have been officially submitted to us. And on this, I don't have anything to add to what we have said last week, meaning that we hope that everything will be placed in by summer, and therefore I don't have any more specific information to give you on the timing of disbursements at this stage. On the question of reforms, I mean, as you know, we are still in discussions with a lot of member states on the finalization of their recovery and resilience plans. As you know, Portugal has officially submitted its plan last week. We indeed expect more plans to come this week. And there, the rules of the regulation apply, meaning that we expect member states to address a significant subset of the council-specific recommendations which we have issued over the last years. And those reforms need to be described in details and accompanied by milestones and targets. So this is what I can say at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your very active participation to today's midday briefing. The day is not over. We will have a technical briefing later on this afternoon on relations between the European Union and Switzerland. So stay tuned. Thank you very much.